So I got my coffee. I'm ready to go.
All right. Good morning. Grand rising,
Good
everyone.
morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning, Jeff.
Yes. All right. We are definitely live. That's what the computer says.
Hi there, everyone. Hope you're doing
Yeah.
good on this Sunday morning. It's the 29th of September, which means we're rolling into October. Jeff is going to go into our October update today. And we've also got a new moon coming up. And from what I'm hearing, might not be that friendly. So let's get started, Jeff.
All right. Thanks for that. Yeah. Yeah. We have a new moon, which is an annular eclipse. And there's a lot of different descriptions between what an annular eclipse is, but essentially it is an eclipse, but the elliptical orbit of the moon places it closer or farther away from the sun. So it doesn't exactly match the size when it happens. And what happens is you don't get a full occultation of the sun on this new moon, but it will be an eclipse. The interesting thing, though, and most importantly, is this is known as Cycles 8 South, and it's a nasty one, to say the least. See, what happens is these start at the north and south poles, these eclipses, and they serpentine around the Earth. And it's very interesting because the Chaldeans, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, and the Vedas knew about this stuff. They knew that eclipses weren't just an alignment simply of the sun and the moon and the earth, but they were also happening or starting at the north and south poles. And these series would continue up to sometimes 2,000 years. Like this one here actually began in 1718 and it ends in 2962. So you can see that's the better part of 3,000 years it goes on there. It's a long time. It's a very long, about 1,000 years. What am I saying? Yeah, it's just a little over 1,000 years, close to 1,200 years. So, it's quite substantial that these people knew how these eclipses would actually happen and when they would happen throughout time. And they actually have a whole codex, which I have, that tells you when it happens. Well, this particular eclipse coming up on October 2nd fits into a nasty eclipse. Why? It again is 8 south, and what they do is they take the astrological alignments that happen when the eclipse starts at the south or north pole. This one actually began at the south pole. And it's nasty because it was at the midpoint of Saturn with the moon and Mars. So the moon is emotions, Mars is always violence and intensity, and Saturn is definitely, when you mix it up with Mars, not a good combination. So, again, I'm not predicting doom and gloom. What I am saying, this is a very intense eclipse. And the order of the day is it brings a lot of separations, it brings anger, it brings potential violence, etc. And what do we got happening here in the world? I mean, if you look around, I mean, things are deepening. Iran's going to come back at Israel for what just happened with all these leaders being taken out. They're not just going to roll over and say, okay, they're gone, right? They'll put somebody new in and quite possibly nastier. So the conflict could potentially escalate. And that's what I see happening. Also, we've got, Russia has actually got bombs, missiles landing in Russia itself with the conflict with Ukraine. That could deepen. Even Putin just said that he is going to upgrade, his abuse or use of nuclear weapons. So this is a dangerous time for all of us, the whole world at large. And again, we're hearing all these terms on the media and the news, axis of evil, and the same kind of terms we heard in World War II. And again, I've been mentioning Uranus is going across the seven sisters in the Pleiade, and it actually, speaking of seven, it's going to be in the constellation of Siderial Taurus for the next 7 years. It started back in this June of 2024. So the next 7 years is a potential for a lot of trouble. And we're in it right now. And as I had mentioned, Uranus is retrograding backwards to this fixed star called Algol. And that's not the only one either. It's going to be hitting a series of fixed stars as it goes into January, especially in December. Hits Denebola and then hits a couple of other ones and then comes back going direct and hits Caput Algol again in the spring. So we're, really in a situation here where the world at large could go into some serious conflicts. And I hope that's wrong. I totally hope that's wrong because, you know, thoughts are things, and hopefully these leaders will look and see what the outcome of something like this could be. I mean, you start chucking nuclear weapons and biochemical weapons around and some of the other weaponry that they have that we don't even know what to call it. It would be a scary scenario. And, China's rattling sabers, North Korea, this whole BRICS nation is polarizing against the dollar. We got a lot of trouble here. And of course, the election, right? So, what I say this next month, we have a setup because the new moon is not only just happening on October 2nd at 11:49 Pacific time, it's going to happen at 2:49 Eastern Daylight Time. And of course, if you're anywhere else in the world, you will, have to extrapolate your time zone. You're not going to see this one. Here, I can actually put that on the screen if I take just a minute here and show you. If we come over here to the eclipse point, I can actually show you. This is kind of cool. This program allows me to put and show exactly where this eclipse will show up. So if we select the clip, this will be October 2nd, and we're going to put it on the screen. So you can see it's going to be down here in the very southern hemisphere, or not quite, but by the Society Islands. It's south, just kind of a reference. Here's Hawaii. And you can see the 0 degree mark is exactly where it would be precisely. So, and of course, that's 75%, 5%, or 50%, I'm sorry, and 25%. So if you're in California, you probably won't even see it. People in Mexico might see it slightly, but not much. Baja, maybe just a little bit. So it's really not affecting anything directly. It's going right through the southern tip of Argentina and cutting across over here. So people aren't going to see it pretty much anywhere in the northern hemisphere. And but what does it mean? It still doesn't mean that it's not to be paid attention to, because eclipses are hot points and they stay hot up to 6 months to a year. And there's a lot of ancient lore where they would time the eclipse. If it took 20 minutes, if it took an hour, if it took a half an hour, they would say that would be extrapolated depending on the sign that it was in to the amount of months or years it would have an effect. Well, this one, if we look in the sidereal zodiac, where is it happening? Well, I definitely picked Washington, D.C., the District of Criminals. And the new moon is happening in Virgo, which is what they call mutable sign, if you will. And you can see it's happening right there. And this is a sidereal chart. So it's actually happening in the nakshatra or lunar mansion called Hasta. And that one is an interesting lunar mansion because it is ruled here. I'm going to put that on the screen too so that we can see it, just so people can kind of relate to the astronomy of this, which is pretty cool. So if we look at the lunar mansion axis here, you can see whenever the moon and the sun and the earth align, we get an eclipse point, right? So the one I want to show here, though, is the lunar mansions. And let me see if I can find that. There we go. I'm on a different computer these days, so everything's reset here. So you can see Hasta is going to be over here in Virgo, and it's ruled by the moon. You can see right over here. Let me circle that so it's a little bit easier for people to see. You can see right there. See, this is the lunar mansions, which are in between the moon and, of course, the Earth. The Earth would be here in the center. There's actually a better diagram. Let me get that one up that shows it even more. Again, I'm on a different computer, so it takes, this is the one I want to show. This one is a little easier to understand. See, I put a picture of the Earth and also the moon. So this is, again, a zodiac that I always say, no matter how much the astronomers polish the lenses on their telescopes, they're not going to see this one either. So this is a little more easy to understand. See, Hasta right here is ruled by the moon. So this is going to be really emotional. And not just in the United States, but this happens to everybody globally. So you're going to see tensions and emotions quite possibly really rise. And again, look at what's happening in the world. And I have to say, when you look back at where is the money, if we follow where's the money going, well, who's putting the money where, it's fairly transparent that a lot of this is funded to happen. And I'm not sounding conspiratorial. I'm actually hearing reports that support that. And anybody who wants to do a little research can find that out. So it's always about the money, right? I think it was Rothschild that said, you give me control of the money and I care not who makes the laws. And boy, he was pretty right on that one. So this month, I would tell you, not only is it an election month, but it's an intense time. And with Uranus retrograding back over these, again, the fixed star Kappa Algol and also the other stars in the background, very dangerous time. And let's hope that, the deterrents that are in the military, which is the peace through strength concept, hold some water, because we certainly don't want to see the world get nuts, because it really could. And this is exactly just to remind everyone, every 84 years, Uranus goes around the solar system. And here, I'm going to show you that too. This is an interesting diagram if we take this here. And I'm going to use this chart here. You can actually see right here. This is a sidereal chart. A lot of people think it's tropical, but you can see down here, it tells me what it is. See, it's geocentric Lahiri. So Uranus right now, you can see that little RX is retrograde, and it is at 2 degrees 39 minutes. Well, if we look up here, it is going backwards to the conjunction, excuse me, of Kappa Algol. It is now closing. It's only 21 minutes away. And it's going to get to zero somewhere between the 12th and the 14th of October. That's just a couple of weeks away. Very, very powerful. And I can tell you that last time it happened, that's when we had the assassination attempts. Things were brewing in Israel. And of course, we didn't hear as much, but a lot was happening over in Ukraine and Russia. And I can tell you the second hit, when planets go retrograde, they usually aspect something 3 times. Well, Uranus is going to aspect Kappa Algol 3 times. It did so right back in June. I think it was July. And it was July. And the second hit coming up in the second week of October is going to happen. And then its third and final hurrah is going to be in the spring. And we'll be talking more about that. It'll be right around February, March. Again, very dangerous. This is considered one of the most evil stars in the sky. You can look it up. It's called Kappa Algol. And there's a lot of ancient lore regarding it. And even to the naysayers, I say, well, look at the events that have happened. We go back 84 years approximately. We had Hitler, bombing London. We had Hitler, the Battle of Dunkirk. They were invading France. That all was precipitated right when Uranus was going over these fixed stars back and forth. So again, it's never exactly the same. Of course, the world isn't the same. So this is a very dangerous time. Many people are predicting all kinds of horror. Look at the horrible hurricane we just had, wiped out so many people. I think the death toll on that's going to be a lot higher than we know. So again, whatever you want to attribute to, I can tell you Uranus going over those fixed stars, very dangerous. And it tends to excite crazy, out of the blue, eventful things that happen to the world. And again, this is often when tyranny and freedom collide. And this is exactly what we saw in World War II in many, many different ways. It was a very precarious time.
Well, I can tell you, I think I'm feeling that new moon energy already. I think I started to feel it a couple days ago. The emotions, it's weird. You just start to feel off balance, like your balance is different. The way I'm noticing that I'm feeling about certain things, it's just, it's intense. It's definitely intense. And of course, it all depends on where that new moon lands in your chart, right? And I know which house it's landing in my chart. And we were just talking before we jumped on where it's landing in your chart. So it's specific to each person.
That's right. It depends on where it happens in your chart. You look at the house. See, if anybody has computer programs or you can get online, Astrodeens, whatever you want to do, you look at the house the new moon joins. See, the sun conjuncts the moon. Also, too, I need to mention, this is extremely important. See, Rosh Hashanah starts at sundown on the second. And I'm glad you triggered my mind on that, because now, what's significant is that no matter whether you're Christian, you're Jewish, you're Muslim, whatever, Hindu, there's a very ancient legend that the Passover happens with the new moon closest to the spring equinox. And there are 6 lunations, which is just a fancy word that means 6 new moons between the Passover and the fall equinox. So the closest new moon to the fall equinox, which we just had last week, is this new moon, October 2nd. And why is that significant? Because it completed a cycle of purification of the soul in the ancient legends. And this is when the guardian angel would appear to the prophets or people who purified the soul. If anybody ever wants to read that, it's actually in an incredible book called the Book of Abramelin. And it was written by Rabbi Maharil, and probably one of the most profound documents I have ever read. It's absolutely stunning. And what it's about is how to purify the soul and get the guardian angel to come to you from the upper heavens to control, and this is a good one, to control the evil spirits. In fact, in this book, it actually talks about how the evil spirits are forced by your guardian angel to take an oath to serve you as long as it's for the betterment of humanity, creation in general. And it's one of the most sacred and incredible documents I've ever read. And of course, the high holidays and the sacred holidays that are celebrated in Judaism actually still celebrates that ancient legend. So, and I'm not so sure it's a legend. They say out of, 10,000 people that try it, you might get one that has their soul purified enough to actually get the guardian angel to come. Because they say if it doesn't work, he won't show up, right? So it's an incredible book, and it's also parallel with this new moon on October 2nd, which is Wednesday. So very powerful, and have to say, a great significance, and also a great time, no matter what your religion is, to realize the significance of this new moon, because that does not only start the high holidays, but it's a very sacred time that they say, and it's interesting, the Druid legends, there's a Hindu holiday also as well. This time of year, of course, now everybody's Halloween, right? Ghosts and goblins and kids with candy rotting their teeth. But it's really a time when they knew that the heavens and the astral planes were closer to the physical world. The veil was thinner. And again, this parallels the Rosh Hashanah, it parallels the Druid holidays, the Hindu holidays, and many others that were in other cultures that knew this time of year was actually a sacred time of the year when the non-living spiritual souls and angels were closer to the physical world. That also kind of relates to this lunar mansion, Hasta. They actually say Hasta is ruled, that's the lunar nakshatra or map, sky map, if you will, in this new moon happens in. They say it's guarded by the 7 seers of this galaxy. Isn't that interesting? So very, very powerful time coming up here. And again, we don't have to emphasize where the world's at, where the United States is at with this election and everything else. And I want to close with one final thing. And Dr. Emoto, which everybody's familiar with, he's the guy who came up with the messages in water. They did another experiment, which was very interesting, and talk about something called thought form elementals. And this is, again, why I love Vedic astrology. I want to show you something here that's really kind of cool. And this, I've used this diagram a lot, and you can see on here, there's the what we call chakras, right? These are energy centers in the body. And you can see you have the crown chakra here, but what's most important is the Jupiter third eye chakra. Now, science has kind of laughed at this, but they're kind of waking up to it because I'm talking to a lot of doctors who say, the pineal gland has such a connection to consciousness. Well, we've mentioned this before. Fluoride, all the pesticides on the food, all the food additives can actually calcify the pineal gland, which knocks down consciousness, which keeps us stupid. And they've been pouring fluoride in the United States water systems for probably 80 years. I don't know if it's been that long, but I know for sure it's been 60. And they've been doing it pretty heavily. Barnum and Bailey used to use fluoride in the water to calm the animals in their circuses. So did the Ringley brothers. I know that for a fact because I've actually talked to people who knew it. They dumped it in, and that would keep the animals more docile and a lot less likely to attack. Well, where am I going with all this? The Jupiter chakra is where we project what we call thought form elementals. This is exactly what Dr. Emoto was doing when he took water that was prayed over, meditated over, or sampled for someplace and froze it, and then, of course, looked at it under a microscope. Well, what I'm about to bring up is very important. I saw this experiment on Twitter, which is, of course, now X, and they took 3 vials of rice. And one, they filled it up a little bit of water, or beakers, you can call them beakers, little glasses. And what was so profound about this particular experiment is on one beaker full of not with a partial bit of rice in it, the person every day said hello, was very kind to it. The next one, it projected hatred to it. And the third one, it just ignored. Well, the first one, after about a month, started to ferment and had a really sweet smell. The second one started going sour, and the third one that was ignored rotted. And so the one that had hatred ended up being really foul, and the beaker with the rice in it that had totally being ignored just was decaying. And the one that he said pleasant things to was fermenting and becoming, very, very positive. So where am I going with that? Well, we actually have a lot of power when people meditate, they prayer, or they project, or have goals, all these types of things about controlling the mind, right? And this is very germane right now. When we look at the world at large, we collectively, and there's been experiments on this where they've actually had groups of people praying. In fact, in India, they do something called yagyas, which is when someone's sick, this group will get together and pray for them, or if they have bad karmas. And interestingly enough, miraculous things have been reported to happen. And again, just like the rice experiment, the one that got the most love started fermenting and really doing well, right? And the one that got hated, decayed, and the other one just rotted away, right? So we do have power with our thoughts, and we do have power with our intentions. And this is a time, especially in America, where I think that is extremely important to wake up and realize the power of words, the power of thought, and the power of actions. So it's really a very powerful time to become aware of that, and in the world at large, so we don't end up watching mushroom clouds or people dropping like flies from some horrible war machine.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Let's hope it doesn't go there. Thank you for this, Jeff. I know you have to go. You have a 10 o'clock. We normally take questions. We can't today. Rocky Stucci Jr. is here. Hello. He has a really nice question. I'm going to hold that for our next live. And also, yes, we will put in the description the name of the book that Jeff was talking about, so everyone can see it there. And thanks again, Jeff. Let's all hold on tight. Say our prayers. Like Jeff was just saying, the power of thought, the power of prayer is so incredibly powerful and can shift things. So have a beautiful